and all kinds of other types of physical elements. And so this report you'll find very interesting because it really eviscerates.
So what's the, Robin, we just have 20 seconds. What is the conclusion?
Yeah. The conclusion is that it did not, that World Trade Center 7 did not come down by fire, and nor did it come down by one single beam slipping off of a particular joint, which is what NIST, and it concludes that the only capability or physical reality that brought the World Trade Center 7 down was controlled demolition.
Yeah. Okay. I'm still very skeptical, Robin, but.
Yeah, but you're not a PhD.
I am
not a PhD, Tom.
There you go.
And listen,
I'll tell you that right front. I'm sorry, Robin. We're out of time. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Welcome to the Free Speech TV Fall Fund Drive. It's fun and fund. It's time to pitch in. This is your opportunity to become part of the Free Speech TV family, to join up, to sign up, to help out, and to help keep this network on the air. Free Speech TV is unique. You've probably noticed there are no commercials. Free Speech TV is not supported by big corporations. It's supported by people like you. And in fact, that's the vast majority of Free Speech TV's revenue. They have a couple of small foundations that help out from time to time, but virtually all of the money that runs Free Speech TV comes from small donations from individual viewers. And that's a big deal. You know, listener-supported, viewer-supported television is a challenge. It's tough to put together, it's tough to build, but Free Speech TV has been doing this for over 2 decades, and they have built this, truly, in my mind, just truly extraordinary product, this truly extraordinary network where we have an opportunity to interact every day. We can talk to each other. I take calls, and a lot of the other shows do too, and put together some good, solid information for you. You can call anytime. But please call in the next 2 weeks, this week and next. We've got, this truncated period, 2-week fund drive. Today is the first day. We would love to kick it off well. The first 2 days, today and tomorrow, there is a $20,000 match, thanks to our fall frontline funders. So your gift, up to $20,000, will be doubled. So call now, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution. Help Free Speech TV build this network, help it grow this network over time. And we've been doing this. Free Speech TV has been building and growing for all of the, I think it's 15 years I've been with Free Speech TV. It was the first call-in show to come on the program, or on the network rather. And you know, very happy that we've received a good reception, and a lot of people are very excited about it. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Your gift will be doubled up to $20,000 today and tomorrow only. And by the way, a special tip of the hat and many thanks to Andrew in San Diego. These are the people who put up that $20,000. Andrew in San Diego, Bill in Boise, Brenda in Copperas Cove, Texas, Carol in Bandon, Oregon, Charlene in Houston, Texas, Diane in Avalon, California, Diane in Santa Rosa, California, Joe in Washington, D.C., Mac and Tiana in Cowdrey, Colorado, Mike in Tippecanoe County, Indiana, Reggie in Raleigh, North Carolina, Sam in Desert Hot Spring, California, Steve in McLean, Virginia, Suzanne, in Catlett, Virginia, Tracy in Jacksonville, Oregon, and Vivian and Bobby in La Puente, California. So thank you to those folks. And thank you to you. If you're calling now and making a contribution, if you've contributed before, you can add to it today. There's two ways you can give. One is a one-off gift. The other is becoming what's called a sustaining donor, or a sustaining member, which is where you give Free Speech TV your credit card number, and they charge your card every single month, $5, $10, $25, $50, whatever you're comfortable with. And that provides them with a budgetable foundation for future planning, which is really important. So two different ways you can give. On the one-time gifts, there's a bunch of freebies, a bunch of premiums, I think is the official word in the industry. With a $20 gift, you have your choice of the Proud Student of Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, or the Free Speech TV window cling, the clear Free Speech TV windows cling, or the I'm Voting Are You car magnet. With a $50 gift, you have a choice of a Free Speech TV keychain and window cling, or the Free Speech TV fall canvas tote bag. Beautiful, beautiful gift. $75 gift, the Free Speech TV baseball cap, or the official Thom Hartmann Program mug. With a $120 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV t-shirt, or my new book, The Hidden History of American Democracy, autographed by the author, or Rise Up the Power of Narrative and Pursuing Racial Justice, Sonali's new book. She's been on this program talking about it. Or David Pakman's new book, Think Like a Detective, A Kid's Guide to Critical Thinking. We will be getting David on to talk about that. Your choice, one of those things with a $120 gift. With a $200 gift, there's the Free Speech TV hoodie. With a $240 gift, there's the virtual meet and greet with me on, this is, on a Zoom call. And with a $1,000 gift, you have your choice of either an in-person meet and greet with us here in Portland, or the complete set of the Hidden History books, all 9 of them, signed by me. So those are the gifts, the premiums that you get. But the most important thing is to call now. Make this, let's make this fund drive, this pledge drive, a success. We've had some that were really successful. We've had others that weren't so successful. I'm telling you, the next one, this winter and spring, they're going to be, and next fall, they're going to be insanely difficult because every politician on earth is going to have their hand out. So this is really probably our last chance to have a really successful pledge drive. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and become part of Free Speech TV.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome to the second hour of our program. Amid the COVID search, this is very, very strange stuff that's going on down in Florida. And of course, there's also the other 9/11. Actually, let me take the other 9/11 first. Henry Kissinger. Robert Reich is writing about this over on Substack. Henry Kissinger was the guy, the war criminal, who promoted the overthrow of Salvador Allende in Chile. The Chileans had elected a progressive. Salvador Allende was in fact, he was a socialist. And his big thing, there were two industries that he was going after. There were three major mines and mining companies in Chile that accounted for about a quarter of the country's total exports. These were copper mines. And these three companies were American-owned. And so what they were doing is they were extracting copper out of Chile and selling it on the world market, and then keeping most of the money and giving just a small bit back to Chile for having taken all that copper out of the country. Well, Allende campaigned on nationalizing those mines, on giving them either to the Chilean government or to Chilean companies. And he actually, started that process when he became elected. The other thing was a company called IT&T, International Telephone and Telegraph. IT&T owned most of the phone systems in Chile. And Allende had campaigned on nationalizing those, because the service was crappy and they were just basically exploiting the Chilean people, charging them a fortune for lousy phone service. And Allende was like, we're going to fix that too. Well, both of those were the reasons that Kissinger essentially gave. He said, there's this model effect, is what he called it. He said that if Allende has a successful presidency and he successfully gets these, the telephone system and the copper mines away from the American-owned owners of them and nationalizes them or even privatizes them with Chilean companies, that other countries around the world where the United States has a large presence and is actively basically ripping off those countries, extracting wealth from them, other countries around the world will look to that as a new model for governance and say, hey, if Chile can do it, we can do it. I mean, Kissinger was unambiguous about this. He said to the CIA director, Richard Helms, he sent him a letter saying, we will not let Chile go down the drain. And then 3 days later, in a 15-minute conversation with Richard Nixon, he said that the CIA must, quote, make the Chilean economy scream. And, this was what Nixon said, make the Chilean economy scream. This was the result of a successful lobbying effort by Henry Kissinger. He emphasized to Nixon, quote, he said, this is a quote from Kissinger, the election of Allende as president of Chile poses for us one of the most serious challenges ever faced in this hemisphere. And then he went on to say, your decision as to what to do about it may be the most historic and difficult foreign affairs decision you will make this year. It was 1970. In the days after the 9/11 1973 coup, this is the other 9/11. You talk to Chileans about 9/11 and they think you're talking about 1973, when the U.S. and General Pinochet, rolled those tanks in and seized the presidential palace and either killed Allende or he committed suicide. That's still in debate, and took over the country. And we were largely ignoring the massive repression that happened right after that. Allende was a fascist dictator. He came into power and he started rounding up people who were opposed to his regime in the National Stadium, torturing them, murdering young men, raping young women, intentionally. I mean, publicizing it, bragging about it as a way of terrifying the populace to go along with him. For 17 years he did this. He would take his liberal opponents in helicopters and drop them out over the ocean on the coast with Chile and publicize it. It's why Proud Boys wear T-shirts that say free helicopter rides for liberals. This was the other 9/11. Henry Kissinger is now 100 years old. He's still a war criminal. In fact, he traveled to, I think it was China last week, maybe it was Singapore, but he was somewhere in Asia just last week. I mean, he's still getting around, and he's still doing his stuff. Kissinger had said, I think we should understand our policy, however unpleasant they may act. He's talking about Allende. This was back in '73. This government is better for us than excuse me, he's talking about Pinochet. He said, this government is better for us than Allende was. Right. One other 9/11 thing to remember, right? Meanwhile, down in Florida, Joseph Lopatto, I believe his name is, or is pronounced, has, he's out pushing this idea that the booster that's going to be coming out in probably the next week or two. I mean, tomorrow, Tuesday, is the day that the what do you call it? Food and Drug Administration is going to be issuing a report on whether we should legalize, or legalize is the wrong word, but certify. I don't know the exact language that they use to describe it, but make this vaccine, this new booster, available to us. And he's saying, well, you know, it was never tested on humans. No, because the technology was, the previous shots were tested on humans, and there was basically no problem. I mean, this is just a slight tweak in the spike protein. But this past week, the overall death toll in Florida passed 90,000 for the pandemic. I mean, this goes back to 2020, but 90,000, one of the highest death tolls per capita in the country. And they had 24,000 new cases this last week in Florida of COVID, whereas in June, the average was around 7,300 per week. So COVID is hitting Florida really hard right now. And here you've got the Surgeon General talking about how, this is a verbatim quote. By the way, this is the Surgeon General who supports the abortion ban. He said, quote, "You have sovereignty over your body." Say what? It's amazing. Tina Polsky is a state senator down in Florida, and she pointed that out. She was like, you know, really? Do you really mean to say this? And then she says, the overwhelming scientific evidence is that vaccines are helpful and safe. The Surgeon General is lying to people and scaring people, and the effect is going to be that more people are going to die from COVID. She says, this is our top scientist, and he's lying about scientific data. And then goes on to note, it's not only abortion, but transgender care, telling what you can and can't do, how a nurse practitioner can prescribe you drugs, but a doctor can't, and you can't have telehealth. She said, that's not freedom, that's hypocrisy. But Ladapo is the state Surgeon General. And he said there's basically no benefit to this. He's also publicized unfounded links between COVID-19 vaccines and heart issues in young men. Although he had to remove data from the state study, you know, I mean, he's basically lying to the people of Florida. DeSantis' press secretary, Jeremy Redfern, says, it's absurd to ask whether the governor was vaccinated against COVID-19. We are not going to discuss the governor's private medical information, but they are going to encourage old people and sick people who will die if they get COVID or could die if they get COVID. They are going to encourage them not to get a booster shot. My question for you, because I'm scratching my head around this, I get it that QAnon is all about don't get your vaccine shots, don't get your vaccinations, your COVID shots, and that's a popular thing among the Republican base. It seems to me, and maybe I'm missing something, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. It seems to me that the only benefit that Ron DeSantis gets out of encouraging more death in Florida from COVID is that it helps, he might gain a few thousand primary voters in some states from QAnon people. But really, is that, I mean, you're willing to sacrifice the lives of the people in your state by having a Surgeon General who promotes wacky lies about public health? I mean, is that how craven Ron DeSantis is? Apparently. It's just breathtaking. It's 16 minutes past the hour. Stay with us.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be right back with your calls in just a moment. Stay with us. And welcome back. Matt in Seattle. Hey, Matt, what's on your mind today?
Hello?
Hey, Matt, you're on the air.
All right. Say, I'm a big fan and first-time caller. I'd like to talk about the physics of 9/11.
Okay.
I pretty much accepted the government's conspiracy theory until I saw Building 7 video of it falling just like a controlled demolition. Bottom 10 floors taken out, top like a rock. That made me question things. Started looking a little closer and discovered that there's just no way physically possible that those twin towers could have fallen at anywhere close to the speed they did right through their own footprint and the structure below, without that structure below being removed somehow. And I have no idea, to answer your question, when my TV went out for 15 minutes when the guy suggested you cut people off.
Oh yeah, that is, you know, you can abandon your conspiracy theories around that. We have in the back in the tech room in the back here. Apparently, we have a cable that has gone flaky, and Nate was trying to fix that.
Well, I wasn't making a conspiracy theory. It was just quite a coincidence.
Yeah, no, a bunch of people tweeted me about it and stuff, and it's like there's no there. That was our screw up on our end. The problem is that Free Speech TV should fail over to YouTube. Our YouTube stream is solid and reliable, and instead they threw in an old show, and I have no idea why they do that, because for years we've asked them to fail over to YouTube.
All right, well,
but anyway, back to you.
Subject.
Yeah, we're off the subject, man.
So it's essentially physically impossible for those buildings to fall like it did unless they were removed from below. And I've read about 20 books, different conspiracy theories and debunking of conspiracy theories on this subject. And the last one I read was the only one that made a whole lot of sense, and it debunked almost all the conspiracy theories, of course, including the government's conspiracy theories about the hijacked planes in the Al-Qaeda.
Yeah. You know, there is no shortage of evidence that when you heat steel up to the temperatures it would be exposed to from burning jet fuel, that it loses its tensile strength, that it softens. It doesn't melt. You know, nobody's arguing that it's melting, but that
couldn't have made
and there were 10,000 gallons of diesel fuel on the roof of Building 7. You know, the official explanation for the collapsing of the buildings actually makes sense to me. And if somebody got in these 3 buildings and wired them filled with explosives and then set off, you know, those explosives to kill a bunch of people just by coincidence at the same time that 2 planes hit the buildings, that makes no sense to me at all.
Well, somebody had to wire Building 7.
Why? 10,000 gallons of burning diesel fuel is enough to
in the afternoon.
No, it's enough to soften the steel beams and bring the building down. You know, Matt, like I said, I've said I am no expert on this stuff, but I'm far more concerned, frankly, with the way that our politics were twisted. You know, the creation of the Department of Homeland Security and all this other stuff by the Bush administration as a result of 9/11, than whether somebody put dynamite in the building. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. So remember the John Durham investigation in which he said, oh, the FBI never should have looked into Donald Trump's connections to Russia. And I'm scratching my head going, How can he even think this? I mean, the guy that Donald Trump hired as his first campaign manager, Paul Manafort had taken $66 million from oligarchs associated with Vladimir Putin to install Viktor Yanukovych as the dictator of Ukraine. $66 million. He took money from, he was paid $1 million by the dictator of Zaire, back when it was Zaire, to develop a strong relationship with Moscow. And when finally they threw Yanukovych out of Ukraine, that was in 2015, what did Manafort do? He came to the United States and he said to Donald Trump, well, let me help you, while he's taking money from Moscow. I mean, if nothing else, that should have been a starting point, a huge starting point for the FBI. There's a whole rant about this over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. 22 minutes past the hour. Geeky science for you. There's I never realized what kind of impact air conditioning has on our need for electricity. But as these heat waves are spreading across the world, as global warming is just kicking our asses, we're seeing this. Severe heat, first of all, severe heat kills more people every year than floods, tornadoes, and hurricanes combined, which I didn't know. Also, this is, cooled spaces in environments where it never gets below 90 degrees, even at night, is not just a luxury. I mean, this is a basic human rights issue, a human health issue. And now that we're in this global warming phase, there's more and more demand for air conditioning. The air conditioning cooling is the single fastest growing source of energy use in buildings, according to the International Energy Agency, the IEA. And they say, following a business as usual scenario, they project that worldwide annual energy demand from cooling will more than triple by 2050. That, by the way, is an increase in 4,000 terawatt hours, which is about how much, it's about the same amount of electricity as our country, the United States, uses in an entire year. That's the bad news. The good news is that there's some new technologies. The way that we do air conditioning right now is through a system called vapor condensation, or compression and condensation, which is where you take a gas, you compress it down to a liquid. When you do that, it releases heat. Then on the other side, you convert that liquid back into a gas, and in doing that, it absorbs heat. And so you've got, one end that is blowing out hot air, the other end that's blowing out cold air. You put the hot air end outdoors and the cold air end indoors. You call it air conditioning. You reverse that and you call it heat pump heating. But there's some new technologies. A Florida-based company called Blue Frontier is trialing a commercial air conditioning system based on a desiccant and evaporative cooling. Evaporative cooling is how you and I keep ourselves cool. It's called sweating. When water converts from a liquid to a gas, when it evaporates off our skin, that evaporation process causes that water to absorb heat from our bodies, and that absorption of heat cools us down. Desiccants are chemicals that absorb moisture, that absorb water. And one of the problems with like the old swamp coolers, we had friends in Arizona years ago who cooled their house with a swamp cooler, which was a big box on top of their house that poured water over basically a fiberglass air filter, and then they would circulate that water throughout the house. And as the water evaporated, it cooled the water, and the cool water then cooled the air. So they're looking at doing this. The problem is that it increases the humidity in the house. And so they're tossing a desiccant, something that absorbs humidity, in the process, and that actually further cools down the water. So fascinating stuff. In Bordeaux, I mean, apropos of this, in Bordeaux you've got winemakers who are now having to harvest their crops at night. This has been going on for about a decade now, but it's really picking up steam. France's southern Bordeaux region, it's about 20 degrees on average warmer than it was a couple of decades ago. And you can't pick grapes in that kind of heat. Beyond that, by the way, they want to pick the grapes when they're cool, because then they're a little fresher, they don't go bad quickly and all that kind of stuff. Night harvesting now is common also in Australia and California due to the heat, and so this practice is now spreading to the Bordeaux region. Rising temperatures make grapes mature faster and push the harvest sooner and into warmer periods. One winemaker that was interviewed by Raw Story, or actually by Agence France Presse for this story, said, I remember when I was small watching my parents harvesting grapes in November. He said, last year we were finished on September 30th. So, I mean, even in Bordeaux, well, in fact, he goes on to say, anyone who says climate change isn't real is not a Bordeaux winemaker. So climate change is real and climate change is wackiness. The question is, what are we going to do about it? And, you know, this is a crisis we need Congress to do something about. And unfortunately, the entire Republican Party is now in the pockets of fossil fuel billionaires. And so they refuse to do anything about climate change. It's time to replace the Republicans. It's time to vote them out. I'll pick up your calls on the other side of the break. It's 27 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Right back with your calls on the other side of this break. The Thom Hartmann Program, the place where despair is not an option. Welcome to the Free Speech TV Fall Fund Drive. It's fun and fund. It's time to pitch in. This is your opportunity to become part of the Free Speech TV family, to join up, to sign up, to help out, and to help keep this network on the air. Free Speech TV is unique. You probably noticed there are no commercials. Free Speech TV is not supported by big corporations. It's supported by people like you. And in fact, that's the vast majority of Free Speech TV's revenue. They have a couple of small foundations that help out from time to time, but virtually all of the money that runs Free Speech TV comes from small donations from individual viewers. And that's a big deal. You know, listener-supported, viewer-supported television is a challenge. It's tough to put together, it's tough to build, but Free Speech TV has been doing this for over 2 decades, and they have built this, you know, truly, in my mind, just truly extraordinary product, this truly extraordinary network where we have an opportunity to interact every day. We can talk to each other. I take calls, and a lot of the other shows do too, and you know, put together some good, solid information for you. You can call anytime. But please call in the next 2 weeks, this week and next. We've got, you know, this truncated period, 2-week fund drive. Today is the first day. We would love to kick it off well. The first 2 days, today and tomorrow, there is a $20,000 match thanks to our fall frontline funders. So your gift up to $20,000 will be doubled. So call now, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution. Help Free Speech TV build this network, help it grow this network over time. And we've been doing this. Free Speech TV has been building and growing for all of the, I think it's 15 years I've been with Free Speech TV. It was the first call-in show to come on the program, or on the network rather. And you know, very happy that we've received a good reception, and a lot of people are very excited about it. So please call now. 877-378-8669. Your gift will be doubled up to $20,000 today and tomorrow only. And by the way, a special tip of the hat and many thanks to Andrew in San Diego. These are the people who put up that $20,000. Andrew in San Diego, Bill in Boise, Brenda in Copperas Cove, Texas, Carol in Bandon, Oregon, Charlene in Houston, Texas, Diane in Avalon, California, Diane in Santa Rosa, California, Joe in Washington, D.C., Mac and Tiana in Cowdrey, Colorado, Mike in Tippecanoe County, Indiana, Reggie in Raleigh, North Carolina, Sam in Desert Hot Spring, California, Steve in McLean, Virginia, Suzanne, in Catlett, Virginia, Tracy in Jacksonville, Oregon, and Vivian and Bobby in La Puente, California. So thank you to those folks. And thank you to you. If you're calling now and making a contribution, if you've contributed before, you can add to it today. There's 2 ways you can give. One is a one-off gift. The other is becoming what's called a sustaining donor or a sustaining member, which is where you give Free Speech TV your credit card number, and they charge your card every single month, $5, $10, $25, $50, whatever you're comfortable with. And that provides them with a budgetable foundation for future planning, which is really important. So 2 different ways you can give. On the one-time gifts, there's a bunch of freebies, a bunch of premiums, I think is the official word in the industry. With a $20 gift, you have your choice of the Proud Student of Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, or the Free Speech TV window cling, the clear Free Speech TV windows cling, or the I'm Voting Are You car magnet. With a $50 gift, you have a choice of a Free Speech TV keychain and window cling, or the Free Speech TV fall canvas tote bag. Beautiful, beautiful gift. $75 gift, the Free Speech TV baseball cap, or the official Thom Hartmann Program mug. With a $120 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV t-shirt, or my new book, The Hidden History of American Democracy, autographed by the author, or Rise Up the Power of Narrative and Pursuing Racial Justice, Sonali's new book. She's been on this program talking about it. Or David Pakman's new book, Think Like a Detective, A Kid's Guide to Critical Thinking. We will be getting David on to talk about that. Your choice, one of those things with a $120 gift. With a $200 gift, there's the Free Speech TV hoodie. With a $240 gift, there's the virtual meet and greet with me on, this is, on a Zoom call. And with a $1,000 gift, you have your choice of either an in-person meet and greet with us here in Portland, or the complete set of the Hidden History books, all 9 of them, signed by me. So those are the gifts, the premiums that you get. But the most important thing, make this, let's make this fund drive, this pledge drive, a success. We've had some that were really successful. We've had others that weren't so successful. I'm telling you, the next one, this winter and spring, they're going to be, and next fall, they're going to be insanely difficult because every politician on earth is going to have their hand out. So this is really probably our last chance to have a really successful pledge drive. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and become part of Free Speech TV. Hey, if you like the rants that I open the show with every day, they're typically published over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. So after the horrific school shooting in Tennessee, leaving 3 9-year-olds dead, as well as three adults, the Tennessee legislature has taken 2 very interesting steps. The first is they're moving to shield gun manufacturers and sellers from liability lawsuits. But even more interesting, the legislature has just passed a bill that sets up a statewide system where you can turn in teachers for teaching things that make children feel bad about themselves, specifically teaching white children that white people once enslaved black people. Seriously. Or teaching that, about the Holocaust, for example, that, white people in Germany killed Jews. This is apparently going to be not just outlawed in Tennessee, but there's a whole apparatus being set up right now so that you can turn in your neighbors. It's just, there's a whole long rant about this over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. And welcome back. Picking up your calls here, Dave in Federal Way, Washington. Hey, Dave, what's up?
Hey, not too much, Tom. Hey, there's a straight line from 9/11 and, our invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan to what's going on in Russia right now and with the Ukraine. And I think it's important for people to recognize it. What happened is the Democratic Party has evolved, and this evolution is profound. And, people just need to be aware of it. It's become a social justice, civil liberties party. And frankly, what all these wars are about, from Russia to the United States, is about authoritarian, authoritarianism trying to reestablish itself. I don't know. In Slovakia, there's this guy, Robert Fico, he's described as a social democrat. You know, you would listen at the surface and you'd think, well, he's like Bernie. He is not. He is more like Vladimir Putin or Donald Trump. He's, his policies are repressive as far as, gay people go.
And he's where?
He's in Slovakia.
Slovakia. Okay.
Now,
so what does this have to do with 9/11 and Ukraine?
Yeah, what it has to do with is, like I said, the Democratic Party has become a social justice and civil liberties party.
Yeah, you said
and
that.
This, and what this, what it's got to do with Iraq and 9/11 is, when George Bush, like you said, George Bush needed a war to cement his presidency and to, continue to support oligarchs in America.
Right.
Yeah, and this is, like I said, I think it's important that we realize what this is about.
Yeah. No, I totally get it, Dave, and that's the point I've been making is that Bush and Cheney, Bush got huge political benefit from declaring two unnecessary, illegal, and just wrong wars, and Cheney got huge economic benefit from it. So yeah, spot on. Dave, thank you for the call. Nick in Turlock, California. Hey, Nick, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, thanks for taking the call. I have two quick things. Thank you for clearing up what happened earlier, because that was kind of strange.
Oh,
but
with
regarding that, which you were...
Free Speech TV feed,
with the disruption. Yeah. You were talking about the PNAC, the Plan for a New American Century. Mm-hmm. One thing I think people should realize is in that document written by the neocons, it says we need a Pearl Harbor type attack on the United States.
That's correct.
In order
it doesn't say we need it. What it says is it would probably take a Pearl Harbor type attack to implement this policy that we're proposing, which was an invasion of Iraq.
Which would be a permanent base, American military base in the Middle East.
Correct.
Which was the whole point.
Yep.
I just wanted to bring that up. The other thing I wanted to say, and something your callers might find interesting, is a book that was written, I'm not sure, but it's called Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and it's about
John Perkins.
Yes.
John's been on the show many times. I know John. He's a friend of mine. And, it's an excellent book. He used to, it really is a confessional book. He used to travel around the world, basically extorting governments and threatening governments if they didn't go along with American companies sucking their countries dry. And he got over it. He worked for one of these big consulting companies, and he finally said enough of this, and he wrote a book exposing it. And it's called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Yeah, exactly.
There was a documentary too, and it was very interesting because I believe he was was it Bolivia?
Yeah.
Where he was at a meeting there, and man, I didn't know if he was going to get out of there alive because people weren't too happy with what he was telling them.
Yeah, no, he's John has done a great job of highlighting this, and frankly I think we need more of it. Nick, thanks for the call. Joe in Parker, Colorado. Hey, Joe, what's on your mind today?
Well, I spent less than 60 seconds while I was yelling at the television, finding numerous articles about the Flight 93. Mm-hmm. And it's reported that at least 10 passengers and 2 crew members, and that's at least, made phone calls. And one would think that they would identify the hijackers. Additionally, the cockpit flight recorder has the sounds, of the struggle and all the voices in there. Mm-hmm. So how does this guy think that?
You're referring to my earlier caller who said he didn't think that Muslims or Al-Qaeda or whatever had brought down the planes, but he wouldn't say who he thought brought them down.
Right.
Yeah. I'm with you, Joe. I'm a big fan of Occam's razor. It's typically the simplest explanation is the correct explanation, and the explanation that Al-Qaeda decided that they wanted to punish America. I mean, bin Laden was unabashed about this. He was proud of it. He had said this in a 1998 speech that was published here in the United States. In fact, the New York Times reported on it, in which he said that America was doing a couple of things that infuriated him. Number one, we were buying oil from Saudi Arabia, his country, at very low prices, and he wanted the price of oil to go up to $100 a barrel. He felt that anything below $100 a barrel was exploitative, and and at the time we were buying oil for $35 a barrel, and he was furious about that. And then, of course, America's support for democracies around the world and things like that. So he was like, we're going to hit you. We're going to. Oh, and the other thing was during the when George Herbert Walker Bush was president, and Iraq had invaded Kuwait because April Gillespie said, "Yeah, go for it." One of the things that Bush needed, then President Bush needed, was an Air Force base in Saudi Arabia that they could use to stage bombing missions over Iraq and Kuwait. And the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia gave him that. It's called the Bandar Air Force Base. And that was the second thing that bin Laden was demanding, was that we shut down that Air Force Base and get the hell out of Saudi Arabia, because men and women were walking around drinking alcohol, watching pornography, and showing their elbows, and women were being allowed to drive. And all of that is blasphemy on the holy soil of Saudi Arabia. And by the way, when George Bush, after 9/11, what was one of the first things George W. Bush did? He shut down the Air Force Base in Saudi Arabia. He did exactly what bin Laden demanded. So, you know, and again, that's a piece of the story that's gone down the memory hole, too. Joe, thanks for the call and for pointing that stuff out. Paul in Ambler, Pennsylvania. Hey, Paul, what's on your mind today?
Well, I wanted to talk about the 9/11, I guess, crackpot memorials, the people who have conspiracies about it. At the time when the building came down, there was a lot of people in New York, you know, some of the great writers of New York, the great public intellectuals, who are I consider to be a trusted institution of transmitting American culture without being watered down by crackpots or ideologies and other, I guess, other elements that detract from the truth. One of the many things that was written at the time that really struck me was an article by Gay Talese, who's a famous writer in America. He has had bestsellers, and he's a New Yorker. And he was interviewing the steel workers who worked on the construction of the buildings, the skyscrapers of New York City. And that's an inbred type of union job. You have fathers passing it on to sons.
Right.
The particular man that he was talking to had been involved with the construction of many of the buildings, and his father buildings before then. And he was commenting how they were really PO'd at the Rockefellers and the whole New York City real estate development, you know, cabal, and their urban renewal plans, of which the World Trade Center was about. And the planning for the World Trade Center wasn't to have like this great, you know, monumental, you know, trophy building. It was a speculative real estate building, a speculative real estate enterprise built on reclaimed ports on the East River there.
Right. They
basically had to infill water, and the reason why they did that was they didn't have to go and assemble a parcel and actually pay a king's ransom to the people who owned real estate in New York City. So they went and they created new real estate. I
get it, Paul. So what's the point you're making?
When they started to build it, they used a novel construction. Instead of the steel that was being used by the steel workers who had, for generations, have been putting up skyscrapers, they used Bethlehem steel girders. The Bethlehem steel, which is out bankrupt, that was I don't know how to put it, like the Harvard University of steel manufacturers. All the great skyscrapers of New York City were made with girders of I-beams from Bethlehem, and the structure that they used was like a gigantic lattice coming. We've all seen it. It doesn't allow for a big, wide open office spaces, which you could rent more square feet out of. They came up with a new novel way to design, and these load-bearing structures weren't spread through the building like a lattice work. It was on the exterior. All the steel was much slenderer, much smaller, and not only that, it was cheaper steel for the first time imported from Japan, which again PO'd off, the steel workers from U.S. Steel and Bethlehem.
Interesting. So the bottom line here, Paul, is that what you're saying is that the buildings were built in a way that was a setup for this kind of failure.
Steel, and it had a big hollowed-out interior that it was so weak that when they were doing the tests for it, it would sway back and forth instead of 1 or 2 inches, 1 or 2 feet.
Yeah.
There's a reason why they picked that building. They didn't try to crash into the Empire State Building. They didn't try to crash into the Chrysler Building. They crashed into a building.
These buildings were bigger and taller, too. But I get it. I get it, Paul. I get it. Poorly built. Thank you. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's the True People's Media. I'll be right back with your calls in just a moment. And welcome back. Jeremiah in Coalport, Pennsylvania. Hey, Jeremiah, what's on your mind, man?
Hey, Tom, I missed your opening rant, so I didn't get to hear your take on the project for a New American Century. But they had foreign policy objectives, one of which was to regime change in Iraq. Dick Cheney, Paul Wolfowitz, and Don Rumsfeld were all members.
Yep.
And they said for their
plans
was Jeb to take
Bush.
place. Okay. And for their plans to take place, it would take a long time, save for a catalyzing event like another Pearl Harbor.
Right.
Then we have the August memo warning us bin Laden determined to strike inside the United States.
Correct.
Then it happens, and then we invade Iraq. So
by the way, you're missing one piece from your timeline, Jeremiah. After George Bush got that memo saying bin Laden determined to strike in the United States, he took the longest vacation in the history of the presidency and was hiding out in the state that his brother controlled down in Florida, waiting for America to get hit because he assumed it would be Washington, D.C. And and I may have been right. I mean, there's an assumption that Flight 93 was actually heading for either the Capitol or the White House. And so Bush fled town. He was out hiding on 9/11. Back to you.
Yeah. Okay. So, and like I think like all this about the Twin Towers were detonated and it was planned by the government is far-fetched. Al Qaeda planned it. They carried it out. But we knew it was happening, and I think we deliberately ignored it so that they could get their invasion of Iraq and also so Bush could get re-election.
If you want a conspiracy theory, that's one that I'm not going to make fun of. I mean, the possibility that the Bush administration knew that this hit was coming and chose not to do anything about it. I'm skeptical of it. I don't want to promote that I'm not saying that I believe that happened. But if it turned out that there was any evidence at all that is what happened, and it looks to me like there actually is some evidence of that, then, I wouldn't dismiss it.
It's just too many coincidences.
Yeah.
And, even like, I think if there's evidence pointing towards something and you want someone very smart to reject that evidence, smear it by calling it a conspiracy theory.
Right.
Al Gore, in his book, The Assault on Reason, talked about this, and he said, now, do I believe that George W. Bush deliberately ignored the signs? No, I reject those conspiracy theories. Mm-hmm. So, it just seems like too many coincidences.
Yeah. There's there's a bunch of little pieces to this, Jeremiah. For example, back in the 1970s, if you're old enough to remember, there was dozens of hijackings, mostly to Cuba, in the United States, and the FAA proposed hardening airline cockpit doors. It would have cost about $100,000 a plane. The airline industry got together and lobbied Congress to prevent that from happening, and they were successful. Had we hardened the cockpit doors back in the 70s, 2001, 9/11 never would have happened, for example.
Yes.
So I just see all kinds of moving pieces here. I'm just, Jeremiah, I got to run, but thank you for the call. It's like, and none of these things were actually in my article today. I mean, we keep adding things to it. The list gets longer and longer. It's 10 minutes before the hour. We'll be right back with more of your calls in just a moment. Help support progressive radio. If you're listening to us on a commercial station, call their advertisers and let them know you're listening. If you're listening to us on Pacifica, one of our many nonprofit stations, please support them when they do their fundraising drives. Thanks for supporting Progressive Talk Radio and tag You're It. There is a long history of right-wing, conservative, Republican-appointed Supreme Court justices becoming liberals, or at least becoming reasonable. Earl Warren is probably the best-known example. He was, a right-wing governor of California. He was a hard-ass Alameda County prosecutor, a district attorney, and when Eisenhower put him on the court, a year later, he did the Brown v. Board of Education case. He ended discrimination, racial discrimination in schools, or at least, tried to end it. So why are Republican billionaires now sucking up to conservative members of the Supreme Court? In my opinion, it's not a quid pro quo. They're not trying to get specific votes on specific issues. They're trying to prevent them from doing what Earl Warren did, which is waking up and voting for the benefit of America rather than just their patrons. There's a whole piece about this over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. Welcome back. James in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Hey, James, what's on your mind today?
Hi. Good afternoon. Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure.
I was amused by the way you discussed this wonderful attorney general we have here in Florida, Ladapo, I think, who is really an unqualified, incompetent quack.
Yeah, he's the Surgeon General.
He is,
I'm with you.
Did I misspeak? Sorry. Yes, the Surgeon General of our state. What a wonderful man our governor is to appoint such qualified people in all places and remove people with arbitrary authority from elected positions.
Oh, DeSantis had to pull strings just to get this guy his medical license.
He doesn't care. He appointed a Supreme Court justice who wasn't qualified because she hadn't served as on the bar for 10 years, and then finally somebody had the decency on the court and the ethics to prevent that appointment. But he reappointed her once her year, 10 years, because it's nothing about qualification in this state. It's about kissing the governor's butt and not embarrassing him and making him look like the big, strong man that...
Well, here's the thing I don't understand, James. You're a Floridian. Mm-hmm. What is in it for Ron DeSantis to diss public health and vaccines and end up... I mean, he's going to end up in 5-6 months. I mean, we're clearly in the middle of a COVID wave here in the United States, and it's getting worse. Mm-hmm. In fact, one of the people who works with us, his wife just tested positive this morning. I mean, it's happening. What's the upside to DeSantis of making things worse?
He's in charge. He's in charge of a cult. He doesn't care about people dying. The irony, the only irrational irony in these MAGA cult members is that they call themselves purebloods. Their Truth Social site, if you can stomach looking at that. They actually do. They have memes and everything. I'm a pureblood. I've never been vaccinated. The only irrational, truly irrational, but irony, and I certainly don't wish death on anyone, but you know what? There's a little bit of ironic justice when those people with these diseases and refuse to wear masks and refuse to get vaccinated. But the upside to your question, it's not a rational upside. These are not rational people. They like hate. They like bad. And the smashing the will of anyone who dares to peep up about the fact that he is not democratic. And I mean that with...
Yeah, I get it. James, your phone is fading in and out, so I'm going to have to move along. But thank you for the call. Spot on. Gretchen in Bourbonnais, Illinois. Hey, Gretchen, what's up?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Just fine.
Oh, great. Okay, well, big news happening in our neck of the woods. Just last week, the governor and a whole crew of people were very excited to have the first Chinese lithium battery plant. It's getting installed into Manteno, Illinois.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So we're building batteries here in the United States. I mean, that's a good thing. The fact that it's owned by the Chinese, I'm pretty. That's not a good thing. But whatever.
Yeah. Well, we were chosen over Marshall, Michigan. Mm-hmm. And then there's another plant I think they're going to open, but we're the first one in the Midwest.
Yeah. Well, that's great.
Not sure how I feel about it. I watched a movie on Netflix called American Factory. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I haven't.
And it had to do with a plant that was purchased by the Chinese to make car windows.
Right.
And so it may be apples and oranges. I talked to Senator Joyce yesterday at the the Women's Democratic Party, and the Democrats are all over it. They're all happy. And I'm just still wondering,
jobs.
Is it good for the economy? Yeah,
it's jobs.
2,600 jobs.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got a Democratic administration, and they want to have those jobs. I totally get it. And probably better a Chinese-owned battery factory than no battery factory. But, Gretchen, thank you for the call. That's fascinating. Stay with us. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Joe Madison is going to drop by, and we're going to talk about the state of right-wing radio. Also, I want to get into the chemicals in our environment and what they're doing to us. Stay with us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free, and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Welcome to the Free Speech TV Fall Fund Drive. It's fun and fund. It's time to pitch in. This is your opportunity to become part of the Free Speech TV family, to join up, to sign up, to help out, and to help keep this network on the air. Free Speech TV is unique. You've probably noticed there are no commercials. Free Speech TV is not supported by big corporations. It's supported by people like you. And in fact, that's the vast majority of Free Speech TV's revenue. They have a couple of small foundations that help out from time to time, but virtually all of the money that runs Free Speech TV comes from small donations from individual viewers. And that's a big deal. You know, listener-supported, viewer-supported television is a challenge. It's tough to put together, it's tough to build, but Free Speech TV has been doing this for over 2 decades, and they have built this, truly, in my mind, just truly extraordinary product, this truly extraordinary network where we have an opportunity to interact every day. We can talk to each other. I take calls, a lot of the other shows do too, and put together some good, solid information for you. You can call anytime. But please call in the next 2 weeks, this week and next. We've got, this truncated period, 2-week fund drive. Today is the first day. We would love to kick it off well. The first 2 days, today and tomorrow, there is a $20,000 match thanks to our fall frontline funders. So your gift up to $20,000 will be doubled. So call now, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution. Help Free Speech TV build this network, help it grow this network over time. And we've been doing this. Free Speech TV has been building and growing for all of the, I think it's 15 years I've been with Free Speech TV. It was the first call-in show to come on the program, or on the network rather. And very happy that we've received a good reception, and a lot of people are very excited about it. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Your gift will be doubled up to $20,000 today and tomorrow only. And by the way, a special tip of the hat and many thanks to Andrew in San Diego. These are the people who put up that $20,000. Andrew in San Diego, Bill in Boise, Brenda in Copperas Cove, Texas, Carol in Bandon, Oregon, Charlene in Houston, Texas, Diane in Avalon, California, Diane in Santa Rosa, California, Joe in Washington, D.C., Mac and Tiana in Cowdrey, Colorado, Mike in Tippecanoe County, Indiana, Reggie in Raleigh, North Carolina, Sam in Desert Hot Spring, California, Steve in McLean, Virginia, Suzanne, in Catlett, Virginia, Tracy in Jacksonville, Oregon, and Vivian and Bobby in La Puente, California. So thank you to those folks. And thank you to you. If you're calling now and making a contribution, if you've contributed before, you can add to it today. There's two ways you can give. One is a one-off gift. The other is becoming what's called a sustaining donor or a sustaining member, which is where you give Free Speech TV your credit card number, and they charge your card every single month, $5, $10, $25, $50, whatever you're comfortable with. And that provides them with a budgetable foundation for future planning, which is really important. So two different ways you can give. On the one-time gifts, there's a bunch of freebies, a bunch of premiums, I think is the official word in the industry. With a $20 gift, you have your choice of the Proud Student of Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, or the Free Speech TV window cling, the clear Free Speech TV windows cling, or the I'm Voting Are You car magnet. With a $50 gift, you have a choice of a Free Speech TV keychain and window cling, or the Free Speech TV fall canvas tote bag. Beautiful, beautiful gift. $75 gift, the Free Speech TV baseball cap or the official Thom Hartmann Program mug. With a $120 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV t-shirt or my new book, The Hidden History of American Democracy, autographed by the author, or Rise Up the Power of Narrative and Pursuing Racial Justice, Sonali's new book. She's been on this program talking about it. Or David Pakman's new book, Think Like a Detective, A Kid's Guide to Critical Thinking. We will be getting David on to talk about that. Your choice, one of those things with a $120 gift. With a $200 gift, there's the Free Speech TV hoodie. With a $240 gift, there's the virtual meet and greet with me on, this is, on a Zoom call. And with a $1,000 gift, you have your choice of either an in-person meet and greet with us here in Portland, or the complete set of the Hidden History books, all 9 of them, signed by me. So those are the gifts, the premiums that you get. But the most important thing is to call now. Make this, let's make this fund drive, this pledge drive, a success. We've had some that were really successful. We've had others that weren't so successful. I'm telling you, the next one, this winter and spring, they're going to be, and next fall, they're going to be insanely difficult because every politician on earth is going to have their hand out. So this is really probably our last chance to have a really successful pledge drive. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and become part of Free Speech TV.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the third hour of our program. On the line with us is our old buddy and the host of the Joe Madison Show, weekdays 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Sirius XM channel 127, civil and human rights activist Joe Madison. Madison Sirius XM is his Twitter handle. Joe, welcome back to the program.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. You have been, you were sharing with me some stories about what's going on in the state of radio and specifically in Detroit, but I think it's you know, kind of a larger national issue. Tell us about it.
Well, you saw the story. I think Michael Harrison of Talker Magazine had the best line, and that is, it's like a soap opera. Here was a conservative owner, millionaire, who owned a radio station, and he ended up creating a radio program for African Americans. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of hesitating here because I have to be careful of the language. He supposedly hired some very prominent individuals, like a former city council member and a former judge, and the list goes on, to fill the time slots. Okay,
right.
But he didn't pay them.
Oh,
they did. I'm serious. They were not paid. And so I guess he bought some ad time or billboards, or as I read the story, it was in the Detroit News, and you can get the story. And he said, well, you know what? Nobody was listening. We just didn't have a listening audience. And you're from Michigan, and I spent Detroit is like home to me.
Yeah, me too.
I ran the NAACP. I ran the NAACP there. That was my political upbringing, and that's where I started in talk radio.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, what do you mean there's no audience there? So what happened was he decided that he was going to change the format, and was going to turn the station, an AM station, into a sports format.
Now, this is one of the larger AM radio stations in Detroit, by the way. It throws a huge signal over several states.
See, I wasn't aware of that. Is that right?
I think so. Maybe I'm wrong, but I believe so.
But I fine, and it was called the Big 10 something like that. Mm-hmm. But anyhow, so he decided he called himself firing people he didn't pay.
Wow.
I mean, I'm serious. None of them got paid. And then he decided they had to turn it. They couldn't go into the studio or the building. And he said, well, I'm going to turn it into a sports show. 2 or 3 weeks later, according to the article, he actually reneged and turned it over to the Glenn Becks. In other words, right-wing syndicated talk personalities.
Right, and white ones too.
And no ifs, ands, buts about it.
Yeah,
that's exactly what he did, and so it's clear in my mind. He's doing it just in time for this 2024 campaign that we've got going. But then there's chapter 2, Tom, and that is he wanted to hire the former mayor, Kilpatrick, who got into a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And people can go online and read. I mean, this was a mayor that was disgraced, went to prison, and has fines in the millions of dollars. And he offered him a show. But again, and I guess he was going to pay him something. And then but then he said, you know, I'm really mad at him because he didn't call me back right away. And I offered him an opportunity to have a show, but he had to raise his own money or ad revenue. Mm-hmm. And there's a line in this story, Tom, that he even admits that trying to get your own ad revenue is like climbing Mount Everest in flip-flops.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
and done that.
we thank you. I was going to say, been there, done that. You're a broadcaster. You're not an advertising salesperson. Yep. And this is how, in essence, the black community in Detroit, of all places, were being treated. And I bring this up only because I've heard you say many, many times, these folks are dominating, particularly talk radio. And it's all about ownership. Yep. And it's about how you treat our community. And so people may argue, well, you know, what do you mean? Don't black people, black African Americans, don't they buy things? Don't they spend money? What is their spending power? Well, you know, the reality is we're 13.4% of the population. And to be quite candid, we have, now most people don't know this, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but many people in your audiences, but we have a spending power as a demographics of $1.6 trillion. Yep. That's our spending and our spending power. And there's this myth that we don't, you know, that a dollar in the black community is only lasts 8 hours. And I want you, particularly for your audience, to understand that is an urban myth. Yep. That is not true. But it got started years ago. You know, Asian community, 28 days before a dollar leaves. Jewish community, 19 days. Well, and first of all, the Asian community is very diverse, just like we're diverse. Mm-hmm. But what you have to do, what I think advertisers have to do, is that they've got to understand that it's how you speak to us. It's how you target us. I mean, I'm looking at, you know, my sponsors, One United Bank, Sleep Number Bed, and the list goes on, you know. Mm-hmm. But it's how you speak to a particular community. Yeah. And that's what advertisers don't appreciate. But I'm saying to you, Tom, that story out of Detroit is, and Michael Harrison of Talkers is right, it's like a soap opera. How insulting would you bring together former city councilman who was married to John Conyers, right. A judge, and then you give them a radio show, and then they don't get paid.
Maybe this radio station owner was thinking, hey, you know, we didn't pay black people for hundreds of years. Why should we pay them now?
You know, that's why
I'm half serious, Joe.
Oh, come on, Tom. No,
I think
I'll take that half.
There are white supremacists who have an attitude out there. I don't know anything about this station owner, but you and I both know that there are, there are stations that pay to be charitable very little, to radio personalities. But
I understand that, but at least they get paid.
Yeah, there you go.
And they don't have to be their own advertising executive. But right. This goes back to this, and everybody needs to understand this. It is a business. Yeah. There is no event. And the other factor, Tom, and you tell me what you think. None of these folks were professional broadcasters.
Yep.
None of them.
Which means that they're going to have a hard time catching and holding an audience because they just don't know the basic dynamics of doing a show. From belting it out, the voice modulation to just, dealing with callers and everything else. I mean, this is It's actually both a business and an art form, I would argue, that requires a certain amount of skill.
Well, that's exactly right. And, you know, in the days when I first started, we called it formatics.
Yep.
You know, and it's just a fancy term, an art form, how to do it. And you know, everybody has their own style. And I always tell people, you know, Tom can't do what I do because I'm strictly on Sirius XM. So my language, I can be, well, I was going to say a little spicy, but that's Sirius XM.
Sure.
But you know, and it's a show. But Joe Madison doesn't talk like that when he's having dinner with Louise and Tom, or speaking at a church. But you know, or wherever on campus. But what we have to, I think, what advertisers have to do is and I saw an ad you run that you have in Talkers Magazine. Are you missing 50% of your audience?
Right.
And that's a great ad.
Yeah, the Democratic half of America.
Yeah, and that's what advertisers and owners of these stations have to realize.
Yeah.
You have the potential of getting $1.6 trillion of spending of our spending power, but you have to pay attention to how you speak to us. You have to target. You have to target us. You just can't run an ad. And I've been teasing Tom, my team, and I hear the music, that I listen to Chewy and Blue, and the ads, the ads you guys run. Yeah. Well, you know, there are a lot of black folks who have dogs.
Sure. Yeah, you got to respect your audience. I mean, it's just pretty straightforward. Advertisers do too. The great Joe Madison. You can listen to him on Sirius XM every morning from 6 to 10 a.m. Joe, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thom Hartmann
Great talking
Program.
with you, Joe. I always enjoy our conversations, and it's been way too long since we've had that dinner. Joe, thank you. We'll be back. It's 18 minutes past the hour. And welcome back. John in Gifford, Washington. Hey, John, what's on your mind today?
Yes, sir. Tom, I'm a longtime viewer and first-time caller. I really like your show.
Thank you.
What I'm calling about is all these Republicans who are so gun fanatics that they don't realize that if they elect a dictator, the first thing dictators do is take away all the guns.
Right.
Because, and there's a good example is Fidel Castro. Before the Cuban Revolution, everybody had guns in Cuba.
No, not everybody. Guns were quite expensive, actually.
Well, I didn't mean everybody.
The mob had a lot of guns. That's for sure.
There was a lot of guns.
The mob was
anyway.
running Cuba at the time. But yeah, Castro was able to get guns. And so is your point that we need guns in America so that we can overturn our government like Castro did with the Batista regime?
Well, I'm saying that, no, I don't think that. I'm just saying that if Donald Trump becomes a dictator, the first thing he's going to do to all these people is take away their guns so they can't overthrow him.
Well, yeah, it could be. I suspect that he's looking at it the other way around. He's going to do it the way Hitler did. Hitler actually loosened Germany's gun restrictions and promoted the idea that the Hitler Youth should take firing training, shooting practice and things like that, because he wanted armed right-wing thugs roaming the country. And he got it, by the way. So my guess is that it'll go more that direction, but who knows. John, thanks for the call. Brian in Woodland, Texas. Hey, Brian, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, I need to know the parallel between a democratic nation being invaded by a communist country. It's called Vietnam, right? North Vietnam, South Vietnam. Is that what took place?
Well, it's hard to say. I think that what happened was Vietnam had a civil war. I'm not a scholar of Vietnamese history. There was the French before that, but I believe, yeah, I think I know, but I'm not going to say because I'm like I said, I'm not that up on Vietnamese history, Brian.
Okay, well, there was a North Vietnam and there was a South Vietnam. North Vietnam invaded South Vietnam.
That's the story we heard in the 70s, yeah, in the 60s.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what's the difference between Russia invading Ukraine, communist country invading a democratic society, correct?
Well, Russia's not a communist country anymore. It's arguably one of the most capitalist countries in the world. But
that's totally wrong. That's totally wrong.
Russia invading Ukraine was a war crime. I mean, it's just that simple.
Okay.
Regardless of
Vietnam. Here is, you were against the Vietnam War, correct?
I was.
You dropped out of college to protest it?
I was.
You was, but now you're not.
Right. Well, I was against the Vietnam War because we were lied into it. Whether North Vietnam was invading South Vietnam or whatever. I mean, the rationale that was used was the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which didn't happen. Robert McNamara lied to Lyndon Johnson for 2 weeks, and by the time Johnson figured out he'd been lied to, it was too late. He was stuck with the war.
No, it was Kennedy. It was Kennedy, not Johnson.
No, the Gulf of Tonkin incident happened while Johnson was president. Kennedy had put advisors into Vietnam. We were helping South Vietnam, to try to fend off the Vietnamese, the North Vietnamese, but that was it. Brian, I'm sorry, we're out of time. We'll be back. It's 20. I'm not sure where you were going with that. It's 22 minutes past the hour. Stay with us. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. So the witch hunts really began in a big way in the 1500s as a consequence, in large part, of the Protestant Reformation. There was this competition between the Protestant churches and the Catholic churches for who could be most effective at keeping Satan at bay, in other words, punishing the witches. And it became like a competitive thing, sort of like Democrats and Republicans competing for your vote. Literally, seriously. In addition, there were attacks on women who were performing abortions. Most of the abortionists in that era were women, and they were being attacked for being witches, and that was because they were denying the feudal lords who owned the serfs and their children cheap labor, which was the children. So you combine these things, and today we're seeing something very similar to both of these dynamics at play. There's a whole long rant about this over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. Welcome back. So a fascinating piece published over at commondreams.org by Richard Heinberg. It's titled, "Why 2% is the Most Dangerous Number No One is Talking About." And what this article is about is this proliferation of over 80,000 untested chemicals being thrown into our environment and our food supply by big chem, basically, big chemistry in the United States. And what we're seeing now over the past couple of decades that these chemicals have been all over the place is every year a 2% decline in male sperm count. That's pretty, from 1973 to 2018, that accounts for a 51.6% decline. And by the way, this is worldwide. This is not just in the United States, but it's 2% a year. Testosterone levels in men are also failing, and they think that this is the result of environmental toxins. Low testosterone leads to obesity, low sex drive, and depression. Girls are experiencing puberty earlier and earlier. The average age of onset has declined by about 3 months for every passing decade since the 70s. There's a new book out titled Countdown, How Our Modern World is Threatening Sperm Counts, Altering Male and Female Reproductive Development, and Imperiling the Future of the Human Race. And in this book, the authors note that we're seeing increased difficulties in childbirth. We're seeing increased incidence of endometriosis, increased risk of miscarriage, increased incidence of ovulation disorders, and increasing use of in vitro fertilization, test tube babies, all apparently because of these chemicals are in our environment. Meanwhile, Americans are having less sex, and young people in particular are reporting less sex drive. You know, that in and of itself is not a crisis, but this fertility. So the chemicals, we got the phthalates, this group of chemicals that are in our food supply. You've got the pesticides and herbicides, including glyphosate, which is in almost all of our wheat now. You've got bisphenol A, BPA, and phenol, polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, poly and polyfluoralkyls substances, the forever chemicals. Many of these have already been banned in Europe and many other countries, but here in the United States, they are all over our food supply. They're in the wrappers on the burger that you get from your fast food joint. They're in the coffee cup that you get when it's a paper cup. They're everywhere. They're in, you know, carry-out food containers. They're used in many cases, you know, in the machines and whatnot that would process our food. And now the chemical industry is taking a tip from big tobacco and hiring PR firms and lobbyists to prevent any regulation of their industry. This is, you know, pretty shocking stuff, and something that needs to be on all of our radar screens. And we need to be, you know, individually trying to avoid these chemicals wherever possible.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
The FDA just approved the new COVID boosters. They'll be available shortly. I'll pick up your calls on the other side of this break. Welcome to the Free Speech TV Fall Fund Drive. It's fun and fund. It's time to pitch in. This is your opportunity to become part of the Free Speech TV family, to join up, to sign up, to help out, and to help keep this network on the air. Free Speech TV is unique. You probably noticed there are no commercials. Free Speech TV is not supported by big corporations. It's supported by people like you. And in fact, that's the vast majority of Free Speech TV's revenue. They have a couple of small foundations that help out from time to time, but virtually all of the money that runs Free Speech TV comes from small donations from individual viewers. And that's a big deal. You know, listener-supported, viewer-supported television is a challenge. It's tough to put together, it's tough to build, but Free Speech TV has been doing this for over 2 decades, and they have built this, you know, truly, in my mind, just truly extraordinary product, this truly extraordinary network where we have an opportunity to interact every day. We can talk to each other. I take calls, and a lot of the other shows do too, and, you know, put together some good, solid information for you. You can call anytime. But please call in the next 2 weeks, this week and next. We've got, you know, this truncated period, 2-week fund to drive. Today is the first day. We would love to kick it off well. The first 2 days, today and tomorrow, there is a $20,000 match, thanks to our fall frontline funders. So your gift, up to $20,000, will be doubled. So call now, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution. Help Free Speech TV build this network, help it grow this network over time. And we've been doing this. Free Speech TV has been building and growing for all of the, I think it's 15 years I've been with Free Speech TV. It was the first call-in show to come on the program, or on the network rather. And, you know, very happy that we've received a good reception, and a lot of people are very excited about it. So please call now. 877-378-8669. Your gift will be doubled up to $20,000 today and tomorrow only. And by the way, a special tip of the hat and many thanks to Andrew in San Diego. These are the people who put up that $20,000. Andrew in San Diego, Bill in Boise, Brenda in Copperas Cove, Texas, Carol in Bandon, Oregon, Charlene in Houston, Texas, Diane in Avalon, California, Diane in Santa Rosa, California, Joe in Washington, D.C., Mac and Tiana in Cowdrey, Colorado, Mike in Tippecanoe County, Indiana, Reggie in Raleigh, North Carolina, Sam in Desert Hot Spring, California, Steve in McLean, Virginia, Suzanne, in Catlett, Virginia, Tracy in Jacksonville, Oregon, and Vivian and Bobby in La Puente, California. So thank you to those folks. And thank you to you. If you're calling now and making a contribution, if you've contributed before, you can add to it today. There's two ways you can give. One is a one-off gift. The other is becoming what's called a sustaining donor, or a sustaining member, which is where you give Free Speech TV your credit card number, and they charge your card every single month, $5, $10, $25, $50, whatever you're comfortable with. And that provides them with a budgetable foundation for future planning, which is really important. So two different ways you can give. On the one-time gifts, there's a bunch of freebies, a bunch of premiums, I think is the official word in the industry. With a $20 gift, you have your choice of the Proud Student of Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, or the Free Speech TV window cling, the clear Free Speech TV windows cling, or the I'm Voting Are You car magnet. With a $50 gift, you have a choice of a Free Speech TV keychain and window cling, or the Free Speech TV fall canvas tote bag. Beautiful, beautiful gift. $75 gift, the Free Speech TV baseball cap, or the official Thom Hartmann Program mug. With a $120 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV t-shirt, or my new book, The Hidden History of American Democracy, autographed by the author, or Rise Up the Power of Narrative and Pursuing Racial Justice, Sonali's new book. She's been on this program talking about it. Or David Pakman's new book, Think Like a Detective, A Kid's Guide to Critical Thinking. We will be getting David on to talk about that. Your choice, one of those things with a $120 gift. With a $200 gift, there's the Free Speech TV hoodie. With a $240 gift, there's the virtual meet and greet with me on this is on a Zoom call. And with a $1,000 gift, you have your choice of either an in-person meet and greet with us here in Portland, or the complete set of the Hidden History books, all 9 of them, signed by me. So those are the gifts, the premiums that you get. But the most important thing is to call now. Make this, let's make this fund drive, this pledge drive, a success. We've had some that were really successful. We've had others that weren't so successful. I'm telling you, the next one, this winter and spring, they're going to be, and next fall, they're going to be insanely difficult because every politician on earth is going to have their hand out. So this is really probably our last chance to have a really successful pledge drive. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and become part of Free Speech TV. From international trade policy to immigration policy to housing, we've got all kinds of topics. The wars between Republicans and Democrats, the Republican efforts to induce fascism in the United States. A great selection of opinions will be found over at HartmannReport.com. When Volodymyr Zelensky became president of Ukraine, he was dealing with one of the more corrupt countries, a legacy of the Soviet time, with a number of very, very corrupt oligarchs who basically owned politicians. One of them, like Viktor Medvedchuk, was essentially the Rupert Murdoch of Ukraine. He owned a television network and a bunch of TV stations and was constantly pumping out right-wing poison and tearing people apart. And he owned a bunch of politicians. So, and this is the part most Americans don't know. Last June, a new law came into effect, it was passed the year before, in Ukraine, that basically says to the oligarchs in Ukraine, you can stay rich if you want, but you can't use your money to influence politics. No more oligarchs in politics. They called it de-oligarchization. Seriously. There's a whole piece about it over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. 35 minutes past the hour, and let's pick up your calls here. Fred in Altamont Spring. By the way, Fred, hang on just a second. I mentioned this as we were hitting the break on the coming into this half hour, but the FDA has just approved the new COVID booster, which has some of the new variants, protects against some of the new variants for anybody over the age of 6. So, regardless of your age, get out there and get this booster shot, because COVID is one nasty disease, and the immunity that you get from these shots drops rather significantly after 6 to 12 months. So, Fred, what's on your mind today?
Well, it's good to hear it, Tom, because I'm double vaxxed and double boosted, and I'll be getting that soon.
Me too.
But yes, I want to bring this to your attention, Tom. I never heard on any other news information. In Florida, there's the legislator and our governor has gone after the unions, especially the teachers union and the public employees union. And last week, I was at a meeting with the head of this teachers unions all over Florida. He told me about an incident that happened in Jacksonville, because to stay a union, you have to go through a lot of hoops.
Right.
One of it is you have to have 60% of the employees there have to be in the union, and then you don't get messed with. And of all the areas in Florida, there was only one that met that criteria, and that's Duval Teachers Union.
Mm-hmm.
And last week, the FBI and the IRS raided the Jacksonville office of the Duval Teachers Union, and there's not a lot about it. But I don't know if they did something wrong or what.
Yeah.
But it's something I bring to your attention, because I have heard nothing about it anywhere, and the only reason why I knew about it because of the guy from the teachers union.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I have not heard of that either, Fred. But what I do know, and is no secret, is that ever since the Wagner Act was passed in 1935, legalizing unions in the United States, Republicans have opposed it. The Republicans hate unions. Republicans in 1947, over Harry Truman's veto, pushed through the Taft-Hartley Act, which allows states to become right to work for less states. In other words, it makes it much, much harder for unions to survive. And that's now the case in virtually every red state in America. So, the DeSantis going after unions does not surprise me.
Well, that's one of the reasons I think he's going after Disney, because Disney is mostly unions.
Yep.
Now, some of the other theme parks here are not.
Yeah.
So, so that's one of the reasons.
And Disney also, I mean, there's a one day a year where Disney World is like, catering to gay people, and Disney has a lot of gay employees. I mean, they're in the entertainment industry, and there are a lot of gay people in that industry, or this industry, I guess I'm part of it. And, DeSantis hates gay people too. So, his hate of black people, his hate of Hispanics, his hate of gay people, and his hate of unions, all kind of converge in the education field. Yeah. Fred, I need to move along, but thanks for the call. That was fascinating. Tyrone in Chicago. Hey, Tyrone, what's on your mind today?
Yes, I hope my friend Joe Madison listens, because I call this show all the time. And Tom, thank you for having them on. But Tom, I got 2 points. I want to make a suggestion to you. Joe Madison always say, what you going to do about it? You need to say that, too. People call you and complain. But, Tom, first I want to talk about 9/11, and second, I'm telling you what I do about it. 9/11, I think Bush, okay, I'm going to ask you this question. If Joe Biden was president with 9/11, would that ever happen?
I don't know, but I guarantee you if Joe Biden had been president when 9/11 happened, people would be asking to this day, why is it that after he was notified by the CIA that bin Laden was determined to strike inside the United States, that was on August 6th, he got that memo down in Texas. Why then did he go on the longest vacation in the history of the presidency and absolutely refuse to return to Washington, D.C. until after the 9/11 attacks? What did he know that caused him to do that?
Yeah. And number two, Tom, I'm a register. I register people to vote. And Tom, I'm retired from my job, so I can listen to people like you. But Tom, I'm kind of tired right now. But Tom, I hope Joe is listening to this too. I just registered my 12,100 person to vote.
Wow! Good on you, Tyrone. 12,100 people.
5 years now.
That is wonderful.
5 years.
God bless you.
And you know what, Tom? I'm not going to stop. I'm kind of tired because, Tom, you have African Americans, all kind of nationalities, saying my vote don't count.
Yeah.
And Tom, I need people like you to keep telling people your vote do count.
Yeah, that's amazing. I am impressed. Tyrone, keep up the great work. You are a role model for all of us. That is extraordinary. Thank you. Brian in Olympia, Washington. Hey, Brian, what's on your mind today?
Oh, yeah. Hi, Tom. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I was hearing some crap about President Biden being in Alaska instead of at Ground Zero. Some right-wing talking points.
Well, he's on his way back from Asia.
Yeah. But also I wanted to recommend a few books for you that were written quite a while ago. But, of course, Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, speaking of untested chemicals.
Right. She exposed DDT in that book.
Yeah. Also a book called Sacred Cows at the Public Trough, which has to do with running cattle on public land. And also Billions and Billions by Carl Sagan, which has quite a few good chapters in it. There's a whole chapter on Roe versus Wade, and also a chapter on overusing, what do you call it?
Natural resources. Yeah, you know, he's an American saint. I mean, he was just a brilliant.
He's one of my heroes, for sure.
He certainly popularized science and astronomy. Brian, thank you. Thanks for sharing those books. That's fascinating. Joan in Rochester, Minnesota. Hey, Joan, what's on your mind today?
Well, I'm going back to 9/11, and all I can remember is, first of all, Cheney making a remark about us meeting New Pearl Harbor, about George W. Bush sitting in a classroom on that day reading a book upside down in Texas, and I wonder
was in Florida.
if at all he ever did that again, and it was on TV. And then the implosion of those buildings, which almost is a physical impossibility. And the main thing that I remember was that after 9/11 was over, the afternoon, that it was noted that the bin Laden family was at the Texas White House with George H. Bush, and that day their plane flew out of the United States.
Yeah, they were the only planes in the air. Was a half a dozen or a dozen chartered planes?
And they were the only ones allowed.
Yep.
Now that all doesn't add up to zero. It adds up to a lot.
I agree.
And I'm thinking that there is so much more to this story, and I don't believe that there's any conspiracy at all. And I remember earlier too, when on the TV they showed two pilots from Saudi Arabia or somebody over there being interviewed who were going to Texas, to George Bush's Florida, to learn how to fly American airplanes. Now, all of that is too much.
Yeah, and then the flight instructor at one of those schools reported to the FBI that these guys didn't want to learn how to take off or land. All they wanted to learn was how to fly a plane into a building, apparently. And, he thought that was worth a flag.
We would have never been in a war with anybody over there.
If Al Gore had been president, it would have been a very different outcome.
No. And the big book that was open was Cheney's comment about needing a second Pearl Harbor, because those two wars were unnecessary, with millions of people affected by it and a lot of people killed. And I hold the Bush family totally and Cheney totally responsible.
I agree with you, Joan. And Cheney also famously said, Iraq has 10% of the world's oil reserves, very significant oil reserves. And they were virgin oil reserves. They were very, very cheap to tap and to pump. Joan, thank you for the call. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Taking back the mainstream media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. I'll be right back with you. And welcome back. Joe in Seattle, Washington. Hey, Joe, what's on your mind today?
Hello, Tom. Thank you for all the great work you do.
Yeah,
I wanted to tell you about something that's happening here in Seattle. I know you care a lot about climate change, and your listeners do too. We have a very solid plan here put forth by progressive people in the city council, as well as 350.org Sierra Club. It's called BEPS, Building Emissions Performance Standards. And if passed, it would cut emissions in Seattle by 10%.
Wow.
It's basically asking, we did this similar thing statewide, but this would, in Seattle, affect large commercial buildings, 20,000
Is this just tightening up the insulation and the random airflows?
That, but also making it almost not quite mandatory, but almost mandatory to go electric. We have to go electric because it allows wind and solar, and as you know, natural gas is really a fossil fuel. It's really not natural. It's mostly fracked gas. So this would only affect large commercial buildings. It's for the current ones, and our mayor, Bruce Harrell, previously pledged to support it as soon as possible. He's now gone back on that. Big corporations, Amazon, and also very wealthy corporations are pressuring him. 350 came out with a report documenting that. So, it's a very solid plan, and it would also, if we do pass it soon, it'd allow businesses to get assistance from the Inflation Reduction Act, which would reduce the cost to put it in. So, again, it's 10% reduction, which is pretty huge, and we're asking people to call the mayor, 206-684-4000, and ask him to fulfill his previous pledge to support the BEPS standards to basically reduce emissions in Seattle.
Okay, sounds like a plan, and you got a good plug out there, and thanks for listening on KBCS. Hopefully people will be calling. Joe, thank you. Maverick in Edmonds, Washington. Hey, Maverick, what's on your mind?
First, Tyrone from my hometown, Chicago, registered 12,000 voters. Tyrone, you are my hero. I salute you from 2,000 miles away. They ought to give you a park bench with your name on it, or an intersection in the city, or a whole park with your name on it. That's just phenomenal. That's fantastic. The best story I've heard in a long time. So, about the 9/11 thing, Tom, all these conspiracy theories and whatnot, and I've seen a few of the shows on the television where they have some pretty compelling stories about how it could be, this and that and the other thing. But when you mentioned Occam's razor, that was what I was waiting for. The solution that well, let me just come out and say it. I'll put the whole thing to rest right now. It was me. I did it. I'm guilty.
Okay, we all blame Maverick.
I did it with a little help from the ghost of Teddy Roosevelt, Cesar Chavez, Kenyatta was part of it too. For Pete's sake, people, come on. It was Bin Laden, and he gets his cohorts to do that stuff because he hated us. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and he hated us because George Herbert Walker Bush had put an Air Force base in Saudi Arabia. And I get it. I'm with you.
And the only
Maverick,
reason
we're
I'm
in a break
here
here,
right
so
now
I got to run. But, thank you for the call. Or we're hitting a break, rather. Excuse me. It's 49 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds. It's the Thom Hartmann Program. Speaking the truth, the multinational corporations and, apparently the Bush administration would really rather you didn't. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. So Kevin McCarthy and the Republicans have been pushing legislation and ideas that would basically crash the economy. And a lot of people are kind of scratching their heads going, why would Republicans, who basically are owned by billionaires and big corporations, why would they want to crash the economy? Doesn't that hurt billionaires and big corporations? In fact, no, it doesn't. Billionaires and big corporations actually get richer and more profitable during economic crashes. The largest fortunes in America were made during the Great Depression, or some of them. Joe Kennedy, J. Paul Getty, they made a fortune because it was a buying opportunity. Everything was cheap because everything had crashed, so they were buying up stock and buying houses. They had cash. Also, they have more negotiating power with unions, with workers, with their vendors. There's all kinds of benefits to billionaires and big corporations of having a crash. So don't think the Republicans won't do it. There's a whole long rant about this over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. And welcome back. 10 minutes before the hour. Ed in Erie, Michigan. Hey, Ed, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Hey, go back to the Gulf of Tonkin again. You just brought it up a little while ago here. That's why I called in about it. And I called you about, I don't know, some time ago. And about that, I know you get suggested to watch a lot of stuff, okay? But that documentary, that Fog of War that McNamara did back in 2003, you know?
Yeah.
And I brought that up to you because I kind of wanted you to confirm, because I don't know. You know, I'm not sticking up for McNamara, but they spent some time on that subject, the interviewer. And they played some tapes of the second. There were supposedly 2 attacks, and the one really happened, but they didn't do anything about it. The second one didn't happen because he's got the tapes of the guys talking back and forth on the ships, you know, in doubt of each other. Are you sure this happened? This and that and the other thing.
Right. We're talking the Gulf of Tonkin here, and the USS.
Right.
What was the name of the ship? I'm forgetting the name.
I do too. But no, but but McNamara,
no, I don't think so.
McNamara did that documentary called The Fog of War.
Right.
In 2003. And I suggested over a year ago for you to see. You probably didn't get a chance to see it.
I have not seen it.
I would love to.
Is it about McNamara, or was it produced by McNamara?
No. It was somebody else produced it. I don't remember. Right. He had an interviewer there asking him questions. And I took from it, he was showing some remorse. At least that's the way
you know, that was clear in his last years. That McNamara felt very badly about that. But early on, he, you know, all the evidence I've seen suggests that for at least 2 weeks he was lying to Lyndon Johnson and knew it.
But just that I'm just talking about. I wish you could confirm that and find out if that was true. That there was really 2 incidents. One was real and one wasn't. Yeah. And then Johnson acted on the second one.
It's not inconceivable. I just don't know. But thanks for the tip, Ed. I'll look into it. Jeff in Portland. Hey, Jeff, thanks for calling. What's on your mind today?
Hey, good day, Tom. That's good news about the new COVID booster.
Yeah.
But in your opening remarks, you talked about how right-wingers have lied us into wars like Iraq, Afghanistan, and Vietnam. And I think it's worth mentioning how that, in contrast to that, there's right-wing movements that have been against democracy defending wars. Like, I think you did mention Ukraine, but of course also World War II, when the original America First movement didn't want America to intervene and stop Hitler. And you also mentioned, you highlighted Elon Musk's growing anti-Semitism. And, you know, in my opinion, it's a little eerie how he seems to be following in the footsteps of another automotive pioneer, Henry Ford, who was a rabid anti-Semite and Nazi sympathizer back in the 30s. Yep. So, you know, the parallels between now and then are quite striking. And we all have to do what we can to get President Biden reelected next year. But along with calling out this racism, hate, and bigotry, I do think it's paramount for the Biden-Harris administration to call out corporate greed and its huge role in rising prices and wealth inequality. And to that end, Tom, you know, I'd like to really see President Biden stand with auto workers as this deadline for a new contract approaches on Thursday night. And, you know, I've seen where the wage increases that the UAW is demanding would only put them back to what they were making in 2003. And that's a lot of American workers right now. I mean, the minimum wage in 1963 with the March on Jobs, the March for Jobs and Freedom, the minimum wage was worth $11.50 in today's dollars back then. Mm. So, I mean, we do have, you know, some serious catching up to do. And what are your thoughts?
I completely agree with you, Jeff. And I think this contract with the UAW is going to be a big deal. You know, the union is looking for something like a 40% pay increase over half a decade, and a return to the old-fashioned pension plans. And the company, which has been mind-bogglingly profitable, made billions of dollars, or the companies are saying, no, we don't like to pay working people. We just want to pay our executives and our stockholders. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes. I would like to see stock buybacks outlawed as well, but that's a whole nother topic. Jeff, thank you. Spot on. Lee in Palatine, Illinois. Hey, Lee, what's up?
Hi. I had another 9/11 comment. I don't know if you heard it today or not, but it was reported back shortly after 9/11 that the new Attorney General, John Ashcroft, I guess he was trying to be conscientious. He was flying commercial planes. he was told by the Bush administration, do not fly commercial. You must fly, fly private planes.
I remember that. I remember that. Yeah. And Bush went into hiding for a whole month before 9/11.
Yeah. When you told that story, I said, wait a minute, these two things are tied together.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. Thank you.
We never got an answer for that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Lee. I appreciate it. Jay in Tacoma, Washington. Hey, Jay, I have got about 30 seconds here. You got a quick one?
I'm not saying it was or was not a conspiracy, but I remember with my stepfather on 9/10, sitting there watching how $1 trillion was missing out of the Treasury. And it is amazing what they've done with fear to us to this day. They use fear as a tool.
I don't know about the missing money, but I'm with you on the fear. I mean, that was Bush's whole thing with the terror alerts, and whenever there was an election, suddenly the terror alert went up. That was no accident. That was manipulation of the American people. Thanks so much for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us. That includes you. So get out there, get active, tag, you're it. There are things you can do. Yeah, Tyrone registered 12,100 people to vote. You can do that too. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great afternoon. Be good to yourself and the people around you, and stay safe. Get vaccinated.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
Welcome to the Free Speech TV Fall Fund Drive. It's fun and fund. It's time to pitch in. This is your opportunity to become part of the Free Speech TV family, to join up, to sign up, to help out, and to help keep this network on the air. Free Speech TV is unique. You probably noticed there are no commercials. Free Speech TV is not supported by big corporations. It's supported by people like you. And in fact, that's the vast majority of Free Speech TV's revenue. They have a couple of small foundations that help out from time to time, but virtually all of the money that runs Free Speech TV comes from small donations from individual viewers. And that's a big deal. Listener-supported, viewer-supported television is a challenge. It's tough to put together, it's tough to build, but Free Speech TV has been doing this for over 2 decades, and they have built this, truly, in my mind, just truly extraordinary product, this truly extraordinary network where we have an opportunity to interact every day. We can talk to each other. I take calls, and a lot of the other shows do too, and put together some good, solid information for you. You can call anytime. But please call in the next 2 weeks, this week and next. We've got, this truncated period, 2-week fund drive. Today is the first day. We would love to kick it off well. The first 2 days, today and tomorrow, there is a $20,000 match, thanks to our fall frontline funders. So your gift, up to $20,000, will be doubled. So call now, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution. Help Free Speech TV build this network, help it grow this network over time. And we've been doing this. Free Speech TV has been building and growing for all of the, I think it's 15 years I've been with Free Speech TV. It was the first call-in show to come on the program, or on the network rather. And very happy that we've received a good reception, and a lot of people are very excited about it. So please call now. 877-378-8669. Your gift will be doubled up to $20,000 today and tomorrow only. And by the way, a special tip of the hat and many thanks to Andrew in San Diego. These are the people who put up that $20,000. Andrew in San Diego, Bill in Boise, Brenda in Copperas Cove, Texas, Carol in Bandon, Oregon, Charlene in Houston, Texas, Diane in Avalon, California, Diane in Santa Rosa, California, Joe in Washington, D.C., Mac and Tiana in Cowdrey, Colorado, Mike in Tippecanoe County, Indiana, Reggie in Raleigh, North Carolina, Sam in Desert Hot Spring, California, Steve in McLean, Virginia, Suzanne, in Catlett, Virginia, Tracy in Jacksonville, Oregon, and Vivian and Bobby in La Puente, California. So thank you to those folks. And thank you to you. If you're calling now and making a contribution, if you've contributed before, you can add to it today. There's two ways you can give. One is a one-off gift. The other is becoming what's called a sustaining donor, a sustaining member, which is where you give Free Speech TV your credit card number, and they charge your card every single month, $5, $10, $25, $50, whatever you're comfortable with. And that provides them with a budgetable foundation for future planning, which is really important. So two different ways you can give. On the one-time gifts, there's a bunch of freebies, a bunch of premiums, I think is the official word in the industry. With a $20 gift, you have your choice of the Proud Student of Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, or the Free Speech TV window cling, the clear Free Speech TV windows cling, or the I'm Voting Are You car magnet. With a $50 gift, you have a choice of a Free Speech TV keychain and window cling, or the Free Speech TV fall canvas tote bag. Beautiful, beautiful gift. $75 gift, the Free Speech TV baseball cap, or the official Thom Hartmann Program mug. With a $120 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV t-shirt, or my new book, The Hidden History of American Democracy, autographed by the author, or Rise Up the Power of Narrative and Pursuing Racial Justice, Sonali's new book. She's been on this program talking about it. Or David Pakman's new book, Think Like a Detective, A Kid's Guide to Critical Thinking. We will be getting David on to talk about that. Your choice, one of those things with a $120 gift. With a $200 gift, there's the Free Speech TV hoodie. With a $240 gift, there's the virtual meet and greet with me on this is on a Zoom call. And with a $1,000 gift, you have your choice of either an in-person meet and greet with us here in Portland, or the complete set of the Hidden History books, all 9 of them, signed by me.